So today I want to talk about the court cards. I have talked about this in the past. I've made 4 videos, one about the 4 kings, one about the queens, one about the knights, and one about the pages. I went through many years, many decades of reading tarot cards quite successfully on the basis of one book, The Tarot by Alfred Douglas. And he's not particularly good about the court cards, but he's not much worse than anyone else. And I didn't really have a very good basis of keywords for the court cards for about 40 years until I started my YouTube channel and I did a lot of research. And ladies and gentlemen, I have read up a lot about it now and I want to help. I think the thing about the court cards is that they need to function like major trumps or pip cards. In other words, they need to have meanings, you know? And the problem is that there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of conflicting traditional meanings. And we need to get through that if we're going to give fluent tarot readings. And I was just having another look at this book here, Understanding the Tarot Court. It's by Mary K. Greer with Tom Little. Now, Mary K. Greer is one of the great authorities of the 20th century on tarot reading. And I just want to say that this book's immensely tiring to read. It is like, 250 pages long. It's got so much in it. It's got hundreds and hundreds of meanings. It's got hundreds and hundreds of, scores of different ways of looking at the court cards. At one point she says, make up meanings for yourself. And then she says, no, what about the Myers-Briggs, way of dividing humanity up into 16 different types? And it's just so confusing. And so these books that just go through, she goes through traditional meanings, but I don't know where she got all these traditional meanings from, but she has pages of traditional meanings that you could never, unless you were an artificial intelligence, you could never take them all in and process them. And even if you were an artificial intelligence, you couldn't synthesize them because they are self-contradictory. They all contradict each other. So, there's this book and there's Tarot for Dummies, if you like, and there's 78 Degrees of Wisdom, and it's all too much. So what I did was I did a lot of reading and I narrowed it down to a couple of really good sources, which were authoritative and quite inspiring. And I'd like to talk to you about the court cards in 4 videos. This time I'm going to divide it up by suits. So today we'll do the Batons court, and then maybe next week we'll do the Cups court, and so on. I want to go the opposite route to a book like this and say that ultimately what I'd like you all to, I'm talking to you as if you are people who want to learn about tarot. If you're a tarot expert, then this may not be the video for you. Okay, so that's how I'm talking to you today. I want you to boil it down to, if possible, 1 word per court card. And that's your starting point. And of course, it won't be the whole truth. But if you can't boil it down to 1 word, it means that you don't ultimately have a handle on that court card, okay? Now, you could boil it down to 2 or 3 words. You could boil it down to 10 words. But if you're boiling it down to 100 words, you haven't boiled it down, okay? The pip cards and the major arcana, they can be boiled down to keywords, can't they? We know they can, You could look at the 6 of swords, you could say escape, or you could look at the 4 of cups and you could say boredom, or sulking, or something like that. And we can all have our own personal keywords, and we will differ, and we can differ widely, it doesn't matter. But the point is, I want to help you to find keywords that can be the basis of your reading so that you can fluently read these court cards when they turn up. I also think that court cards are primarily energy and secondarily people. So if you're still trying to get your mind around the court cards, the challenge is to understand them as energies. And if you can do that, then you can read them as people. In my experience, when people pop up in a reading, you don't need to know an awful lot about that person to say, oh, that's your mum, or that's your husband, or that's your accountant. You don't have to know 10 pages about each court card. You don't have to know that the Knight of Pentacles could be a concierge, or he could be a taxi driver. You don't need to know that. And what's more, it won't work if you get that sort of those sorts of beliefs fused into your head. So without further ado, we shall turn the camera to the table and look at some nice versions of the Batons suit, and then we'll sink gently into some meanings and some keywords. And at the end of this video, you will feel better about reading court cards in tarot readings. It's been a while since we've looked at the wonderful Oculi Occultati tarot by Radomil Boguslavsky. So let's look at it now. This is the tarot that I call the most beautiful tarot in the world. Here we have a fantastic king showing a bit of chest. A knight who I would say is probably riding a lion there. You don't see the whole creature, you just see the eye. And you have a lovely page. All the characters in this tarot have their eyes closed, which adds up to a really dreamy meditational feeling. Also, all the characters in the minor arcana, I think, are nudes, except for the court cards. And in the court cards, the artist allows himself to get really into the clothes. So you get these amazing fashions here, and amazing armor. Now, the queen is bare-breasted, so I can't really show you that. Well, I could, but I don't want to have restricted advertising. So let's just... There's the Queen of Batons with a key over her chest. And then just to remind ourselves of Pamela's pictures. Here they are. And Pamela's pictures are, I think, extremely user-friendly. So, we keep on trying to reinvent the wheel, don't we? But in terms of getting a handle on the court cards, I think Pamela does give us a huge amount to work with. These four figures are in the desert. They're somewhere hot. They're all against clear skies. There's a lot of fire. We've got fire going from his helmet. There's sort of aridity. There's maybe a little tongue of flame there. And there we have a sunflower. Here we have salamanders, the creature that I think lives in the fire, doesn't it? We also have lions here. We have a little salamander there, and we have a black cat there for good measure. Now, the court cards, you could say, have astrological correspondences. I don't think you need to go too heavily into that, because the astrological correspondences are partly fudged, aren't they? They're partly made up by the Golden Dawn. They're not the ultimate truth. You can use them if you want. I think what's maybe more interesting about the court cards is that they relate to the playing card deck, except for the Knight. The playing card deck had 3 cards in it, didn't it? It had a Jack, a Queen, and a King. And then when tarot was invented, Knights came in. In fact, of course, the court cards in the early day of tarot, the court cards were very much up for grabs, because tarot was a new invention. It was a new game, a new card game. And so you have early tarots which had knights and lady knights, mounted ladies. There were male and female pages, or rather pages and then serving ladies, or whatever they were called in those days. I can't remember the Italian word for the female pages. But there is one deck, certainly, and it's one of the very earliest tarots, which has 6 figures in each court. So a king, a queen, male and female knight, male and female page. And so incidentally, the idea that the tarot was terribly male dominated in the early days is not true. It was probably made for the amusement of ladies anyway, and there are many female characters in the early tarots, maybe more female than male. Nevertheless, we're going to look at Pamela's court because I think if you're going to have a set of tarot cards for divination, I think the RWS is the best one. And Pamela was a member of the Golden Dawn, and even though I don't think she was a slavish Golden Dawner, she did have access to all the Golden Dawn's papers and theories and mad schemes, and she knew what was meant to be going on. So she knew that they were proposing a correspondence between the suit of batons and the element of fire, and then the element of fire corresponds with certain astrological concepts. So certainly we can see elements of Leo in the king. There's a lion there. We can see elements of Leo in the queen. There's a sunflower. The sun is Leo's planet, and there are lines in the background for her as well. In the night we see salamander. We don't see any particularly astrological signs. In the page we see salamanders as well, and also in the king's cloak, more salamanders. More lions here. So are we to take it that each of these cards has an astrological sign attached to it? Well, no, I don't think so. But I think we can play with astrological concepts. And I think that's quite a good path to go down. Now, in my other videos, in which I talk about the 4 kings, the 4 queens, the 4 knights, and the 4 pages, I talk about the traditional association of the kings, queens, and pages with the historical and mythological figures of the Middle Ages and of the old classical world. And they're really nice, those associations, and you can use them if you want. So you can have a look at those videos of mine if you want. But I'd like us to be very relaxed. And I'm going to talk about these cards and just give you my thoughts about what they can mean in readings, okay? Let's start with the king. Well, he does have an association with Julius Caesar, doesn't he? He's definitely a leader. He's definitely ambitious. In Pamela's drawing, he seems to be on the verge of getting out of his throne. In other words, he is an established person with a throne, with a position of authority, but he's not resting, is he, on his laurels? He wants more. Like Julius Caesar, he didn't want to stop conquering. He didn't want to stop accepting challenges. Here in Julian Massalia's deck, the Golden Art Nouveau, we see him looking rather arrogant. And here in Radomil Boguslavsky's deck, we see him just completely splendid and washed, encrusted with gold and finery. Gold everywhere. Crowley said that each court card could be attached to a part of the natural world. So if the King of Rods was the fiery part of the air, he is therefore the sun, which is the fiery part of the air. The Rods King, fire, air. I'm boiling it down to an image of the sun and a leader and a conqueror. Now, this is not a particularly warm or friendly. Well, no, it's not a particularly warm vibe. It's a hot vibe, and it's maybe a selfish vibe. I think all 4 of the court cards. I think all 4 of the Batons court are out for themselves in a way. And I think there needs to be, I think the personal agenda is a part of life. If no one was out for themselves, nothing would ever get done. So the King of Rods is a leader, and he is charismatic, and he's ambitious. And he's the king, I would say, who is least sedentary. I don't want to go into it any more than that. So single keyword for me clearly is leader. It could be ambitious. Keywords can be nouns, adjectives or verbs. It could be charismatic, or it could just be the image of the sun, bearing in mind that there is a sun card in the tarot. We could say more, but we're not going to say more in this video. We just want to be a bit meditational and not get flooded with too many ideas. Let's look at the Queen. They say this is modelled on Ellen Terry, the famous Victorian actress. And it almost certainly is. Pamela Colman Smith was a friend of Ellen Terry's. She hung out in Ellen Terry's house. She accepted Ellen Terry's hospitality. She went to stay with her. I think it was in Sussex. And so there are 2 or 3 female figures in the tarot. I think you could also say Justice, that look rather androgynous, quite authoritative, you could say, tending towards manly. You could say butch if you were being trashy about it. But anyway, there she sits, with her, like facing the viewer with her legs apart. There is a very old traditional, super old traditional meaning for the Queen of Wands, which is a single word, whore, W-H-O-R-E. Now that for me, personally, is not a derogatory word, though of course, heaven knows it probably was in the past. But I think there's something about this archetype that is female, and it is to do with the body, and it is to do with the sexuality, and it is hence to do with a certain kind of female power, a way of being in the world. I think the Queen of Wands is no less ambitious than the King. I think they're a right pair. Here we see Julia Marsalia's slightly more impish queen, less of a manly jewel there. But you can see by the look on her face that she certainly has her plans, which she intends to push through. And without labouring the point, this is a way of being in the world. There is a certain glamour around the Queen of Wands, I think. And there's a way of being pushy, which I think is wrapped up in layers of charm, maybe layers of beauty. You could use words like seduction if you wanted to. And I also think there's a lot of Leo in this archetype. I understand the Queen of Wands as being very like a woman I know, mentioning no names. Yes, there's a cat, and yes, that might mean that she's a bit of a witch, a bit psychic. So potentially an extremely strong and powerful person. But we're looking for the energy when it comes up in a reading. There's a slight feeling of a steel fist in a velvet glove here. I think I'm going to leave it at that. Let's have a look at the Knight. Now, Pamela's Knight is quite something. I think even in those Victorian times, intelligent people would have noticed that horse is rearing up, and it's kind of phallic, isn't it, in its angle. It even seems to have a certain sort of blush on it. If we look at a version of it where the colours haven't been calmed down and rendered more tasteful, this is sort of standard 1990s version. We see a real a real blush in the head of the horse here. So for me, it's erect and it's orgasmic. I'll spit it out. I also find the hindquarters of the horse rather unhorsey. I mean, it's not one of Pamela's greatest moments, but to me, it just looks more like the hindquarters of a lion. So again, you've got a huge amount of Leo in the Batons court there. And you don't have to be a genius to see that he seems to be on fire here and here and here and here. And for me, my kind of quick mnemonic for this card is fire sign qualities gone raving mad. He's got the ambition and the egotism of Leo, and he's got the ambition and the egotism of Aries and the drive of Aries, and he's got the fun of Sagittarius. I think he's a bit of a thrill seeker, and he is also seeking. He's very much on the move, this guy, but unlike the Knight of Swords, he's not looking for battle. I think he's looking for pleasure, passion, thrills. He's looking for life. He's looking to cause a little bit of trouble, but not a battle. Do you know what I mean? Let's have a look at Julia's version. This is a gorgeous illustration. The Knight of Batons traditionally is associated with departure. He's not someone who will stick around. He's very he never stops, He doesn't come to rest. I see him as someone who drinks a lot of coffee. I see him as an inspiring and energizing presence in a reading. My one-word meaning for him is maniac. It could be energy. I use the word energy as a keyword for the magician, because that seems to be a source of energy from heaven, from above, like channeling lightning with your arm held up. But in this one, it's like energy from within. He's creating his own energy. He might be getting it from his latest double espresso, but he's definitely someone who creates energy. He's combustion, isn't he? There's his whole being is just creating heat, creating excitement. And frankly, that's a great energy to have in your life. I mean, speaking as a lazy Leo, I can be very dynamic sometimes, less so now that I'm older, but there's something about this card which provides a kind of a spark, a reason to get up. And if I see it in a morning reading, I kind of take that as a sort of kick in the pants to do stuff with my day, And here he is in the Oculi Occultati, like everyone in that deck, with his eyes closed, but he's riding a lion. So he clearly means business. Okay. Let's have a look at the page. Now, I think I'd like to start with Pamela here, because this is a very poetic image, and it contains a lot of traditional ideas about the meaning of the page. He is a bringer of news, and he does announce things. Like the rest of the court, he's rather a toff. It's rather aristocratic in feeling, and though he, like all the pages, he might serve you, he's not inferior to you. He doesn't consider himself to be really inferior to anyone. Now, I think the page is not exactly rushing around on a horse looking for conquest and seduction, but he is moving. He is walking through the world, and he is looking for something. And he's traditionally a scout, okay? So he is scouting for territory. He's scouting for arenas. He's scouting for territories in which to express oneself, arenas in which to be creative. He's scouting for opportunities. Okay, so he's more laid back than the rest of the court. But he's part of the team, isn't he? When it comes to creativity and ambition, he's important. So for me, the one-word meaning of the page of Batons is scout. And that could be a noun or a verb. It could mean get up, go out, and look for opportunities. Or it could mean listen for anything that might be an announcement of an opportunity. So those are two slightly different sides of the coin. But that for me is quite enough to be going on with in a reading. I am Robert Farrar, this is Tea and Tara, and I will be back next week with more of this stuff. Have a nice week. Bye.